Please tell us about your candidate's health care plan.
I think it's great that we're asking this question tonight when the California health care plan looks like it went down to defeat today in the state Senate. And on the heels of what I said from my office, winning defense of San Francisco's health care plan that has made us out of the
For that you can applaud.
So, don't take that for my time, but I wish it was something, I'm hopeful that it's something we're going to be able to accomplish on the national scale, because the fact of the matter is that there are nearly 47 million Americans now, roughly 16% of the population are without health insurance. That's 7 million more than were uninsured at the end of Bill Clinton's term in 2000. And I think as much as anyone in America, positive and negative, I don't think there's anybody that has as much familiarity with what it takes to put together a health care plan than Hillary Clinton. And I think we can all agree that most Americans would be a lot better off had the Clinton health care plan been pushed forward in 1993. And I'll say that since then, Senator Clinton has been instrumental in creating the Children's Health Care Insurance Program, which now covers 6 million children. And she has the strength and experience to know what it is that we need to do as we move forward over the course of the next decade. And her plan sets out 3 principles that are guided by making sure that we have an affordable plan, an available plan, and one that is reliable for all Americans. And I think it's important to note that her health access plan that she wants to put forward is based upon ensuring that American choices are there to pick from a public plan, options similar to Medicare, in addition to a broad array of private options that would ensure that all Americans are able to get the same kind of health care that members of Congress can pick from now. And a big part of her plan is ensuring that we provide tax credits for working families to help them cover their costs, and a guarantee that working families never pay more than a limited percentage of their income for health care, that we do whatever possible to ensure that people are not rejected from health care coverage based on pre-existing conditions, and that their health care coverage will be portable, enabling people to keep their health care coverage and take it from job to job in the event that they make that change.
What you'll notice is a recurring theme this whole evening. John Edwards came up with the first and the strongest health care plan. It's a universal health care plan, and I want to thank Dennis very much for describing John Edwards' health care plan. 9 months after John Edwards offered his health care plan, Hillary Clinton adopted it almost whole cloth, with one major exception that I'll get to that makes her plan, sadly, much weaker. But the issue is John Edwards' health care plan is a universal health care plan that's completely paid for by rescinding the tax cuts, the George Bush tax cuts on individuals who make over $200,000 a year. The other candidates on the stage also have health care plans. There's only one candidate on the stage, though, who does not have a universal health care plan. Senator Obama's plan would leave 15 million Americans without insurance. The question, of course, is, what is a Democratic candidate offering a health care plan for that does not provide universal coverage? Which 15 million Americans don't deserve health care? The entire working population, the entire adult working population of California? None of them. That's 15 million people right there. Senator Obama has said that he doesn't support universal health care because he doesn't believe in mandates. His plan does have mandates. For children. He says mandates don't work. If they don't work, why do we have them for children? Secondly, he says he'll have a plan that's lower cost. The problem is, we all know, health insurance, like any insurance, works by bringing more people into an insurance plan. By leaving 15 million Americans out of the insurance plan, the cost will actually be higher, access will be less affordable. And with regard to Senator Clinton's plan, sadly, it doesn't provide for small employers to have coverage for their employees, which means, again, that working families are going to bear the brunt. It's going to create an unfair playing field for small corporations, because many of these small corporations won't offer insurance. So John Edwards, again, has the strongest and the first universal health care plan.
Thank you. For Senator Gravel, universal health care is a must. We all deserve it. We're one of the superpowers of the world, yet we can't insure our people. We can't give proper health care to our people. We're #1 in spending on health care, and we are number 37 in the world as far as delivering health care. Where does all that money go? You might say insurance companies, you might say big pharmaceutical companies, and you're right. Under a Gravel administration, there would be universal health care that would be paid through a sales tax. By having it paid through a sales tax, it takes the burden off of corporations that are becoming uncompetitive in the world by having to bear the brunt of the employees' health care. So again, it would be universal health care coverage paid for by a sales tax. And with respect to another great plan that was that unfortunately we won't be able to see, Dennis Kucinich. I just want to say a brief word about Dennis Kucinich and his single-payer health plan. I wish we still had him here with us because he is an amazing, brave fighter for what the people truly want. And unfortunately, mainstream media and the corporatocracy that we live under, I know everybody would like to believe it's a democracy, but it's a corporatocracy that we live under, marginalizes people like Dennis Kucinich and my father, Senator Mike Gravel. And what we need to do as the people is to take back that power and again, vote for yourself to be empowered so that you can vote on the issues. So take a look at nationalinitiative.us. The abbreviation for it is www.ni4d.us, and learn how you can start voting on the issues. And again, universal health care, we all deserve it. In 1947, Harry Truman was saying that we all deserve universal health care. Why is it that we've still not had it, even though it was described to us in 1947?
Before I rebut Jeff's assertions, I just want to say that I think that Lynn is really speaking some profound truth. Thank you very much. And also, let me just take a frame of reference here. The fact that 9 million children in the United States, 47 million Americans are uninsured is immoral. I am sick and tired of hearing Republicans who we will all have to galvanize against at one point, talking about the perils and dangers of socialized medicine. You do not hear them talking about socialized education, socialized garbage pickup, socialized highway system administration, and our socialized military, which will moral values that we bring. Look, Jeff, the fact is that Senator Obama would vigorously reject your assertion in your calculus that 15 million Americans would be somehow uninsured in his plan. His plan is very clear and very delineated that all Americans would have access to insurance. The goals that we all share on this podium are to ensure providing universal coverage for all Americans. The modalities and the ways that we've envisioned how we do so, though, are different, and there are reasonable differences. Senator Obama has been very clear that we can provide to the 45 million, 47 million uninsured Americans coverage, and we can do so on the same basis that we provide coverage to federal employees, congressmen, and our president. That we can do. For those Americans who have coverage already, we can provide for them a methodology for allowing their premiums to be lower. These goals are not impossible, and they are not incompatible with other plans that involve mandates. The key issues, though, are what do we do on a deeper and more fundamental level? Senator Obama has been very clear. First, we reduce costs of our overall healthcare system by the U.S. government picking up more of the tab for the most expensive illnesses and conditions. Second, I have to stop it. Let me just say one last point. I can go through the plan and you can see it as well. But one thing we need to do is take on the drug companies, take on the insurers. The fastest growing part of our healthcare system is the profits they are earning. It's reprehensible, and we all have to do something about it going forward.
Our fourth question. What does your candidate believe of the United States' role should be in the Middle East peace process?
I think among the biggest failures of the Bush administration has been its abrogation of leadership in the quest for peace in the Middle East. And the fact of the matter is that George Bush has turned his back on the problem and avoided bringing American leadership to the table until the very last hour of his administration. It is imperative that the United States take a leadership role in helping to bring about peace in in the Middle East. And I think that Hillary Clinton recognizes that one of the best ways to enable us to play a constructive, renewed role in the Middle East peace process is to get out of Iraq as quickly as possible in order to ensure that we can take that vigorous, active role and leadership role in doing what we can to provide peace in the Middle East and ongoing security for the State of Israel. Senator Clinton has said that a fundamental element of a final agreement on peace has been on the table since 2000. Recognition for Israel's right to exist, guarantees of Israeli security, full diplomatic recognition of Israel, a declaration that the conflict is over, and normalization of Israel's relations with Arab states. And I think if you look at what she has done in addition with her continual condemnations of Iran and its aggressions, her rejection of Hamas taking any sort of leadership role, she has been a true friend to the State of Israel and fully recognizes the imperative of taking American initiative and American leadership to bring the parties to the table to try and negotiate a secure and just peace.
This is one of those extremely critical issues that fortunately all of the candidates agree in large part. First, all the candidates agree Israel is our ally, our partner, our friend, and it is our country's obligation to stand up for the only democracy in the Middle East. With respect to the peace process in particular itself, it's Israel's desire to have a two-state solution where its peace, security, and existence are recognized and supported. That must be a condition of any U.S. participation and the participation of anybody else in the peace process. Until Hamas agrees to end terrorism and to recognize Israel's right to exist, it cannot and should not be part of that process. As John Edwards has said, fighting Palestinian extremists is critical to our security as well. And it's important to recognize that it is not a right of the Palestinian Authority to receive financial support from the United States. It is something that will be guaranteed when the Palestinian Authority, and in particular if Hamas is to participate in the process, recognizes Israel's right to exist and prosper. And then finally, with respect to Iran, it must be fundamental that the President of the United States prevents Iran from gaining nuclear weapons. Obviously, Israel would be an important and significant target if Iran were ever to achieve and gain nuclear weapons. That must be a condition, must be an important stepping stone for the next President of the United States, and it must be done with all of our allies. Again, going back to Dennis's point, until we can regain the moral authority we had prior to the invasion of Iraq, we will not have the authority to protect our national interests and the interests of our allies overseas.
I would build on that statement by saying that our foreign policy in the Middle East creates our own enemies. We are exacerbating the issue by being over there in Iraq. The way to lead is to show peace, to get out immediately. And there's no way to clean up our mess in Iraq by expecting the rest of the world community and the Islamic community to come in and take orders from us. That's not going to happen. The only way to bring the international community in and the Islamic community in to repair that and stabilize that section of the world is to do it by the U.S. getting out. With respect to Israel, I've heard it said, and I've seen some research, and maybe many of you in this room might know more about this than me, that if it were put to a vote of the people in Israel and in Palestine, would they do a land for peace agreement? That it would be a possibility that there would be an opportunity for peace to exist in that region, that the people could vote for what they're willing to give in order to get peace. So, something to investigate. With respect to Iran, our history with Iran goes way beyond our Bush legacy right now. Back in the 50s, we destabilized their democracy. It was our CIA that taught them their secret police, their torture methods. So we have a lot to apologize for and repair in the Middle East. And it's about respecting all people's opportunities. Israel's right to exist, Israel's right to safety and security, absolutely paramount. All people want to live in peace. So finding a way that isn't a military solution, but is a diplomatic solution, and these are the possibilities that we could pursue.
Today is a very profound day. It's Holocaust Remembrance Day. It is the anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz, where some of my family perished. And I think it's appropriate that we're here under the auspices of the Wallenberg Club, speaking about Israel and all of our commitments to its safety and security. We can talk about differences in how we achieve safety and security in Israel. Let me speak briefly about the fundamental commitments and principles that a President Obama would bring to that common cause. First principle is that the safety and security of Israel is and will be one of the top fundamental foreign policy priorities of an Obama presidency. Clear. Second, the idea that two states can peacefully coexist within safe and secure borders is a goal that we can move towards and will move towards under an Obama presidency by more engaged and sustained and predictable diplomacy. It is absolutely wrong that it has taken almost 3.5 years for the Bush presidency to recognize that there is indeed an opportunity to bring peace to Israel. Let's hope that he will leave office with a peace treaty, but and let's all push towards that. Let's all recognize that there is still significant work to do. And we must do so as we look towards the new administration, as Senator Obama has said, by recognizing that Israel must be guaranteed security if peace is to succeed. We must be partners in that peace. We must be active partners, but we also must draw in and coalesce towards a viable and sustainable peace with more engaged diplomacy, not only within the region, but outside of the region, to bring our allies and partners within the OECD, in Asia, interested parties at the United Nations, again back to the table so that we can actually bring this to where it needs to be the fundamental international issue that must not only preoccupy us, but drive us to success, to finally achieving peace in Israel.
I want to point out that there are cards for questions that have been circulated. We've been asked if you would pass them to the aisle. They will be picked up. We have 3 more preset questions, and then we will go directly to your questions. The next question for the panel. Has the surge in Iraq worked, and what should the U.S.'s continued role be in Iraq?
I think the question is sort of false premise, because I can tell you, if we put 150,000 troops here in San Francisco, things would look pretty good if we had some problems until everybody left right then. So I don't think the question is whether the surge has worked. I think the question is whether the war in Iraq has worked. And the answer, I think, as we will agree, is a resounding no. And it's time to end this war beginning today. Senator Clinton has said that ending the war in Iraq is the first step towards restoring the United States' global leadership. And you've heard various accounts of that here today, as we were talking about a couple of different issues. So the most important thing that we need to do is end that military engagement in Iraq's civil war and immediately start bringing our troops home. As President, Hillary Clinton has said she would pursue it in 3 phases. Number 1, to bring our troops home. Number 2, to bring stability to the region. And finally, to replace military force with a new diplomatic initiative to engage countries around the world in order to secure Iraq's future. And I think you may hear, as we go on, that there are some people that think that their view differs. I think that even Senator Obama has said, as much as he wants to bring the troops home, he would say that there are a certain number of troops that he would like to leave in Iraq to combat terrorist activities and the like. I know this is an important issue for everybody in this room, and it's important that we recognize that as a country, I think that all the candidates recognize that to restore the United States global leadership, we have to engage in intense diplomatic initiatives, working with a variety of actors, global powers, states that are immediately in the area of Iraq, to ensure that we are doing whatever possible to not interfere in the Iraqi civil war, that there is mediation among different sectarian groups, that there is reconstruction funding to meet Iraq's extensive needs, not just to prop up a government, but to ensure that you have the institutions that can be rebuilt so that Iraq can take care of itself. And that is what Senator Clinton has proposed all along, recognizing that there is a political solution that has to occur. It is not going to be solved simply through an American-imposed military solution.
No, the surge has failed. We're playing a constant shell game with the Bush administration. First, we were going to go into Iraq because we were fighting terrorism and we were going after Al-Qaeda, which of course had no connection to Iraq. Then we were going for weapons of mass destruction, which of course didn't exist. Then we were going to establish democracy in the Middle East, which hasn't been established in Iraq. We're playing the same shell game with regard to the surge. The purpose of the surge was to allow for a political solution. The Republicans would have you believe, because deaths have come down slightly to 2004 levels, that somehow the surge has worked. The surge has failed. There is no political solution that is being established. The second part of this question, what does Senator Edwards believe is the U.S. continuing role in Iraq? And I think Dennis put it clearly and put the point on it. We need to get out of Iraq. We need to establish our moral authority among our allies. But, and this is where John Edwards differs substantially from Hillary and Barack, we need all combat troops out of Iraq. It's not a semantic issue. You saw in the previous debate, Barack Obama wanted to make it a semantic issue. No, John Edwards is clear. He will not have combat troops in Iraq. He will have combat troops in friendly Kuwait for the purpose of preventing a genocide, for the purpose of establishing an attack in Al-Qaeda. But as long as we have combat troops in Iraq, we will be an occupying force. And as long as we are an occupying force, there can be no political solution to the civil war that has broken out in Iraq. Therefore, it is not just a semantic issue. We need, and John Edwards would get all of our troops out of Iraq within the first year, 40 to 50,000 within the first month of his administration.
Absolutely. I don't know if some of you are familiar with Senator Mike Gravel's record, but back in 2002, in the spring of 2002, he was calling this invasion of Iraq our next Vietnam War, and speaking out against it at every opportunity. We need to end this war now, and what is so disheartening is that we have control, the Democrats have control of Congress, and it's not happening. Senator Gravel proved that one person from the Senate floor can make a difference. He filibustered alone and with others for 5 months to end the military draft during the Vietnam War. He helped end the Vietnam War. He released the Pentagon Papers that were the secret documents of what the government was doing with the military that was illegal. And he risked imprisonment for doing that. He stood up to the Nixon administration and was sued all the way to the Supreme Court. So that's what leadership from the Senate floor is. What we're not seeing right now is any leadership from the Senate floor to end this war now, and it can be ended now. When we hear that there aren't the votes there are the votes there. You vote cloture every single day and show the American people who's keeping this war going and who's not, and let them weigh in. Let them weigh in. It would take approximately 2 weeks for the American people to start recognizing who's keeping this war going and who's not. And the filibuster could be overcome with the same way with cloture votes. And this is the way we could bring an immediate constitutional confrontation to the Bush administration and take back our government. The Congress has got the control to end the war. They've got the control to impeach Cheney, but they're not stepping up to the plate to do it. And that's what we want to see, is real leadership from our sitting senators here. With respect to what the continuing role would be in Iraq, we have to treat the other nations as equals. They're not going to come in and help stabilize that region if we want to be the boss and protect Halliburton and our oil interests, and that we're the ones who are going to make the money and everybody else can stand in line. That's not the way it's going to work. We have to step out of the equation, step back from the equation and work with aggressive diplomacy to bring stability back to this region. Thank you.
5 more American troops died in Iraq today, and I think we should reflect on their lives and their bravery as well as those other civilians who have perished in this conflict. There is no military solution to the dilemma of Iraq. We need to aggressively engage in a new diplomacy, a diplomacy that will allow us to draw down our troop presence in Iraq, just as Senator Obama and the other candidates have been talking about, so that we can actually use those resources, use those arrows in our military quivers, and point them exactly where they need to be pointed in places like Afghanistan and Pakistan, where Al-Qaeda and other real threats are located. How do we do this? How are we going to achieve this process of creating an infrastructure for reconciliation and the end of the civil war in Iraq? Senator Obama has offered a very clear path, but it starts with, again, principles. The idea of bringing new players, new voices, new communities around the table, including the UN Security Council, our European allies, to engage in a new compact towards working towards reconciliation in Iraq, which will be one of the first things that he will do as President of the United States in his first 100 days, is bring his Joint Chiefs around the table to begin to think through in a very deliberate way how we actually can create the infrastructure for reconciliation. One of the ways we're going to need to do that is to do significantly more than the Bush administration has been doing in terms of dealing with the consequences of war, not only inside Iraq but outside of Iraq. There's so many displaced Iraqis. The State Department has only offered $183 million to their return. Senator Obama's talked about a $2 billion fund towards humanitarian assistance to create greater infrastructure for progress on the road towards reconciliation and the end of the civil war in Iraq. Our troops cannot and will not resolve a civil war in a country. It is the Iraqis that have to do so. The surge that has been in place by the Bush administration has incrementally lowered violence, but as Jeff and others have said, it's really not accomplished much. The violence is only down to previous levels.
I've got to interrupt you.
Okay, go right ahead. Okay. I have so much.
It's much better when you're on the radio and you can just push a button, and disappear. Question number 6. Now, it could be worse. I could be doing commercials. What is your candidate's view on the best response to the threat of terrorism?
After 9/11, with the world rallying around the United States as never before, we had a historic opportunity to build a global coalition against terrorism. Unfortunately, the Bush administration has cost America its respect, trust, and confidence of some of our closest allies. That opportunity has been squandered. Resources were diverted from the struggle against Al-Qaeda. A unilateralist approach was pursued in Iraq, and a world was created where America has fewer partners and more adversaries than it has at any other point in the recent past. In order to reclaim our position of respect and leadership in the world, we must be stronger, and our policies must be smarter. And I think that when we come back, it's so intertwined with what we talked about Iraq earlier. It's about restoring relationships where we have credibility on the world stage, so that when we speak, we're speaking with a voice of moral authority. And when we identify a threat, our partners, our allies, people around the globe take it seriously. And that certainly has to be backed up by at least a belief that the United States will do whatever possible to protect the homeland. But the fact of the matter is, when you go out and you talk about things in a false way, there is not the credibility to motivate the world community to stand behind you on threats of terrorism. Certainly, I don't think that there's any doubt that Hillary Clinton has the strength to give people the confidence that she'll never negotiate with terrorists, and that they must be hunted down and dealt with severely, and that we must disrupt all avenues open to them to ensure that we're protecting people here at home.
And I started out, I got these questions, and I went to my nice little John Edwards cheat sheet. You know, so we all have our own cheat sheets. If you want to read the cheat sheet, go to johnedwards.com. He's got a nice big fat 80-page book on it. And I thought, you know, that's not really going to help anyone. We're all going to come up with specifics. And I thought back to something I heard John say about 9 months ago. Probably one of the most articulate statements of how all of these issues tie together I've ever heard from anyone. And what he talked about, in addition to all the issues of fighting terrorism around the world, which are extremely important, he talked about addressing global poverty. How you can't actually protect our own national security unless you can begin to address the issues that are creating the hotbed, the fertile breeding ground for terrorists in the first place. And John Edwards, not only is he trying to address poverty in the United States, he's got a specific detailed plan for addressing poverty outside of the United States, which is in our national interest. A $3 billion investment to get there are 100 million children in the world who don't have an education, and therefore are destined. Your investment, a fraction of what we spend in our military in Iraq, probably about what we spend in Iraq in a single day, we could educate 25 million children around the world. And if we could get our allies, if we could reestablish that moral authority, we could get them also to contribute and make sure that these children have an education. The other issue John talks about articulately is energy independence. That what we're doing with $100 barrels of oil right now is propping up undemocratic regimes that are also creating a fertile breeding ground by not allowing any political discourse for terrorists. And because we are propping them up, we of course become a significant target. So unless we can address these underlying issues, poverty, energy independence, and others, we will always have terrorism. So yes, we need to address terrorism at the top level. We need to stop terrorists directly. But we also need to root out the causes of terrorism.
Excellent. I love that. I would just build on that by saying we need to know our history. So terrorism just didn't happen all of a sudden. With respect to Iran, Iran initially helped us with the Taliban right after 9/11. And so our thanks to them was to then call them the axis of evil, and they had a moderate leader, and now they've got Ahmadinejad. So by taking this stance that we're number one and we're not going to, we're the policeman of the world, we alienate other countries that would help us. So I concur with the two of you that cooperation is the number one solution to terrorism. It needs to be a police action, not a military war action. A nuclear weapon is not going to help us find these terrorists. What we need to do instead is to look toward our cooperation and getting our moral credibility back. And that means getting out of the Iraq War now. It also means stopping torture. I find it interesting that when the senators had a chance to stand up to torture and tell the American people that they were against torture, that they actually hid from the vote on Casey. That's, to me, a questionable leadership. Under a Gravel administration, the first thing he would do would be to bring the prisoners out of the Abu Ghraibs and the Guantanamos and the secret prisons and start giving them the lawyers that they deserve, and we could then reclaim our moral high ground in the world, that we treat people fairly and we do not torture people.
Why is the United States today one of the most reviled nations in the world? This is the first question that the next president of the United States has to ask her or himself if we are truly going to find constructive solutions to our fight, and it is a fight against terrorism. We have been fighting the wrong war with the wrong equipment. The fight against terrorism has to be much more narrowed and much more focused on its roots and its causes. We all agree with that. Senator Obama has spoken about bringing a new approach to foreign policy based on the idea that talk is good and not talking is not good. We can talk to the leaders of Syria and Iran and North Korea and other nations with whom we have had no communication without precondition as a mechanism of moving the ball forward in achieving our national security goals around the world and here at home. But let's also remember that this is very serious stuff. Terrorism is a significant issue that will be on the desk of the president for many years to come. Senator Obama's view is we need to spend $50 billion in rethinking how we train our military to deal much more focused and laser-like way on terrorism, how we train them to actually be able to be conversant culturally and linguistically in the languages of other nations, how we reinvigorate a public diplomacy that will speak much more clearly about America's policies and principles and purposes abroad, and how we can actually use better resources and much more targeted investment to indeed protect the homeland. Our chemical facilities, our ports, our water supplies, our transportation hubs. These are things that will command the attention of the White House for many years to come, but it has to start with a new approach to standing up on the world stage and to say, look at us, we are a compassionate nation.